Grooming. Before we dive into some scene breakdowns, I want to introduce to you who are not familiar maybe with basic concepts and terms we are using when groom our creatures. And these four are these basic terms. Let's begin with the curves. Okay. Curves. Maybe you are not using Houdini as your main package for grooming, but the curves are basically heart of grooming pipeline. If you are working in another software and want to work in Houdini, maybe simulations, you need the curves. And you're exporting that as a Alembic and bring into Houdini and simulate from that. Guides are basically what we are using when grooming, no matter which software we are using. Guides are primitives, basically. Houdini reads them as a primitives on which we apply styling tools or brushes. After guides, we generate hairs. Now, this is a breakdown of one strand. You see control points, and these control points are like polygons, treated like polygons when you're modeling. You know, when you have more these points, basically hair will be smooth, and you have more control when styling. This depicts segments in guides. From the left side, you see that left guide have just 2 points, which basically means that you can't groom because you don't have enough control. And on the right side, you have 30 control points, which means that you have a lot of control. Imagine like that you have some curly strands, and to get that shape, you need a lot of these control points. These are actually hairs which is rendered, what rendered reads, and this is the hair strands. Styling, we have manual and procedural. Basically, 90% we are using manual. And these cyan kind of curves, which are guides, directly affects generated hairs. A lot of people think that we are using brushes directly on the hair, but that's not the case. We are actually doing grooms on the guides, these cyan curves. These are some basic kind of universal operators we are using when grooming our creatures. Guide groom is main operator which contains different kind of brushes like moves, move, shaping, scatter, planting, etc. And these are more like kind of modifiers, treated like a more procedural way of grooming guides and hairs. This is short breakdown of these operators. Like you see, this is set direction. Which makes general flow of your fur. Of course, you have every operator have different options for fine-tuning. You have also masking for painting specific type of maps on which you can directly affect which part of hair this particular operator is applied. So this is lift. Usually, when you start grooming, guides are more perpendicular to the surface, so you need to kind of bring more to the surface. So lift is one of the crucial operators we are using. This is freeze, also one of the main tools, main operators we are using. And we have a length, which, like name says, directly affect the length of the guide. Now you have control for general scaling or extending guides from the last point, which is which can be useful in some situations. Now, the power of these operators are, like I said, you don't need to comb every guide. But the drawback is that you don't have really much control for fine-tuning and getting shape which we are after. Now, Groombear, heart of our workflow at Creator Studio. Groombear is basically like extended version of Guide Groom modifier you saw in the last slide. It's really powerful, user-friendly, and really becomes second nature to you once you get full grasp of it. So it's really amazing, one of the, if not, maybe the best currently available groom tool in grooming world. And a quick demonstration of Groombear. One of the main idea of grooming at the beginning is to get the main flow. So that's current process I'm doing. And no matter how details you put, if your flow is not at the right place, your creature will never look good. So this is a really important step in grooming. Of course, I'm now changing, we are now in comb mode. Really nice feature while grooming, like relaxing guides. If you have some holes with some shortcuts and combinations, you get really fantastic tool set for kind of getting more uniform guide distribution. This is scale brush, you can see it here. Which defines length of the guides. Yeah, like a trimmer. Of course, a lot of these results can be achieved with using maps. But I like as much as get in the grooming process. So this is scattering brush, which is also one of the most useful tools. You have options for defining densities and sparse, how sparse will be your guides.
You missed the spot.
Now, one of the most important things is interpolation between the guides. So I'm consciously put this guide in this shape, so in the next few seconds you will see why. Take a look at this. See? When you're moving your guides, it kind of interpolates between different shapes, which is fantastic. With one hold of mouse button. Now this is lift, like lift operators you saw a few moments ago, but this is lift on brush level. So you have really fine-tune, you have really full control of your grooming and on which place you want to achieve particular result. It's kind of push away guides from the surface. Fantastic tool, draw brush, which is like name it says, you basically draw a shape which you like and you are looking for. And in just a few moments you will see there are not many tools on the market which have this level of control. It's basically like drawing splines in Photoshop, but in full 3D and now it's the some moment. Now I'm showing you a copy brush, which is like the clone tool in Photoshop. Once you planted your guides and style in the shape you are looking for, copy brush will just take that shape and make a copy of it. So you don't have to make it from scratch. And this is all tools which Grooming offers you. Cut brush, which, like name says, once again, see how guides are interpolating between each other. Of course, you can turn it off if you don't want that effect, but in 99%, this is what you need. Another fantastic tool I want to show you is animation snapping mode. Look at how these fingers are closed and basically makes a little bit harder to groom in this pose. Okay, when you are you see how, for example, when you pick first finger, you are affecting and middle finger, which is not ideal situation. And Grooming have an answer for that, which you will see in a few moments. And that's it. Basically, our hand is animated. And I am turning on animation snap options and groom in that pose. say. I don't think that any other grooming solution have these options. So this is really one of the best features. Now, let's dive into some creatures and animals we had in last year. This is Liger model. Basically, we start with the references, and this is base mesh. These are actually scenes. We are using a guide, groom, and hair gen modes. I mean contexts. And we are now in guide groom mode, where we are basically planting, and now I'm defining overall flow of for the creature. And interesting here is that at some point production decided that basically Liger is not suitable for them, and tried to get more like standard lion anatomy shapes. So how we solved that is via guide transfer operator, which basically takes guides from one mesh and transfer to the other. So you don't need to groom from the beginning. These are some standard operators like clamping, freezing, defining lengths, etc. Here's the final render. Here are references for the lion. Okay, you see here our first mesh, this gray shaded model which we started on, and this orange is the model on which we transferred our groom. And this is guide transfer operator which served that purpose. And this is final look at the model. This is turntable. And this is the standard lion. Okay, now Dimi's turn.
So, I'm Dimitrije, and I started out grooming at Creator. And after a while, I got a little more into dynamics, simulating fur, and to make it look, make it have more interactions with outside objects. And just to start to represent what simulating fur looks like. This is basically just a simulation of collisions between two objects, between the guides and the ball. And to this is also a cheaper way of doing something similar, where it just interacts with the ball as it comes close. This is mostly about processes being used instead of in the grooming phase to be interactable, to be more of a thing for interacting with outside objects. and only a few processes can be used in that way. This is set direction. And set length.
We are showing you these rough examples just to make to you a clear picture when we move on more complex creatures, how we actually did the process. So this is just like more simple.
Yes. The main reason for using processes instead of simulation is that it's a lot faster to do and that it can be done by multiple machines instead of just one machine. So you can set it to render, put it on the farm, and depending on how many machines you have, you can do it. You can do it that much faster. The problem with it is that it doesn't take into context the previous state of the hairs. As such, a lot of these effects look less realistic, yeah, fake. But for several things that I'm about to show you, they actually worked to a level that was acceptable for the client and us. This is a close-up of the shot, and this is the full shot. Okay, I'll show it again. In this case, it okay. In this case, the process worked for us because it was just a way to solve collisions, and from the time that I took the task to do this to the time that it was finished, it took about 4 hours. It's a very fast way of working with. This is another example of where we used the set direction to simulate wind, to fake wind, because it's not actually simulating. And it worked very well for the collision with external objects, where it didn't require, for the shot to work, it didn't require to be a nice-looking collision, but just so that it doesn't look like it's going through the fur. All of these external objects are using processes to not just affect the flow, but also to shorten the fur so that the cape doesn't go through the fur. And in this way, it didn't have to be a simulated fur, which would have taken at least 2 or 3 days. And we got it to be pretty much an automatic process, where the only thing per shot that could have had to be modified is the radius at which it radiates the mask of influence. And this is the main reason why we decided to do it like this, because any object that the dogs were wearing were moving around a lot on the body. They weren't tied to it, so that we could just fix the groom and let it deform. But we actually needed to make it so that it was more of a dynamic system, because the vest and the collar move around on the body a lot. This is another reason why, because we had shots with a lot of dogs. The the grass here is also done with fur, just with correcting the shader. It does miss a few details, but as grass, we thought it worked well enough. And now to get into shots that actually did require simulation. The simulation is very bland because that's only a little bit of movement is what the client wanted, which also makes sense since it's curly, dense hair. Not a lot of air drag goes through it. But main reason why we did the simulations here is to get the collision with the shoulders. And here is a scene with everything that we did together.
And we can do anything about
Yeah, and to get, these were the main references for what's coming up next, which is the Tiger Cup that we did. That was the main asset for, I can't remember what the documentary is called, the
Joe versus Carol.
Joe versus Carol.
Yeah, it was.
And this is pretty much the scene breakdown. We split it into a separate groom for the head and the body, because me and I think Peter were working on it at the same time. He decided to work on the body, I decided to work on, and he decided that I should work on the head. In that way, we could pretty much multitask and just fix the blends that came up on the part that we merged. There is one thing that's of note here that was a mistake on our part. This is how it looks with a lot of hairs. And these are all the modifiers because not all the modifiers are the same on every part of the groom. So we had several modifiers that controlled the length of some parts compared to others. Let me see, I think. And then just to skip. Yeah. This is how it's not the final render, but it's close to final. We had several more comments when we got into the shots, mainly about the ears, that the ears needed to be more according to the reference, which later we fixed. And the turntable. And here is what it looks like in the shot. Just one thing to mention, that it does happen that per shot you have to adjust the groom. For if I go back, the fur on the nose is very sparse. It's the part of the nose is mostly done here by texture. And when we got into this shot, the client wanted us to do more of a furry nose, in which case we needed to adjust and add more furs on the face. And here's another one. And here is a part where we did simulations to collide with the hand. We started this by doing just the simulation of the guides, and afterwards we found out that the simulation was working to an extent, but wasn't very good. Afterwards we found out that anything, because the simulations are done on the guides, and you generate everything in the hair, and we had a lot of modifiers in the hair. Every modifier was subtracting from the simulation. As such, we needed to additionally fake some movement, and the main thing that was wanted here was to have some movement. And we got it, but it wasn't the best of. This one's for you.
Thanks. Next in the series of creatures is the mewling cubs. It's like baby tigers. And again, a lot of references. And this is final look dev scene. We had like 6 variations. And this is in the shot, one of the shots. So no real tigers are affected. And this is another shot in which these variations are together. Bobcat. Again, references. And process is more like previous. We basically used guide, groom, and split the creature into more parts to have more control. So basically, when you work in Houdini, you have a guide, groom, object level SOP, object level context, and you have a hair gen context for generating hairs. Why I will telling you this is on bare asset you will see that we omit that workflow and move to the more kind of advanced and smoother, because we had some problems during rendering. But I will explain to you in just a few moments. More like, yeah, same process, so move forward. Here are renders. Different lights, condition, you see. On the left side is our light setup, on the right, basically maps which we got from our clients to make sure everything works like it should. Pose can be sometimes a little bit tricky to groom, so I'm just showing you some details we did. And this is actual shot, one of the shots. How we are standing with the time, Bogdan? Now, this is one of our recent creatures we did last year, brown bear. Of course, like every project starts with collecting a lot of references. some model development. We basically did just details on the head because other parts are covered by the fur. I mean, head is also, but you know, part near the nose area or eyes can be seen. So, of course, mouth area. So we just give a bit details to that part. So, in like every model, few simple rules, stick to the reference. When you think you know some stuff, believe me, you don't as much as you know. So 1,000 times how bear looks when you actually start to build a reference are key. And keep real scale proportions are another rule for, because bear got some fur seam. Also, we did muscles and small seam. So basically, everything which is in real scale is much better for dynamics stuff. So another quick scene breakdown. Here's the top level, or geometry top level, where we painted the maps. These are basically attributes which are applied on the guide groom processes I showed you in the beginning of this talk, and are transferred in the guide groom and in guide groom context. Of course, you can take some attributes and it can serve you like base and move forward. You don't need to paint from scratch.
This project is when we. This project was done relatively recently, and it was when we decided to take a look at our grooming pipeline again. I did a lot of studying, and I found out that not many studios actually work with groom processes inside of after the deformation. The reason for it is that it can go wild because the input is always different, so you can't always get the same result with processes. And what we decided to do then was to go with higher density of the guides, which we then could simulate and get a much more accurate simulation, because the guides more reflect the fur in the end. Of course, the density of the guides is quite high. You can't simulate with that many guides. So what we do, we take the guides and delete most of them. Leave about, I think for the simulation it was about 400 guides for the bear, which then lead the rest of the guides how they should move and behave. And sorry, not 40,000 for the simulation. The full guide groom had about, I think,
Guide groom 3,001,100,000.
Yeah, we went a little bit overboard with it.
And overall hair strands are about 6,300,000. So it's really huge. And what I like about Houdini is, you will see in just a few moments, actually quality of the viewport in which can generate all these guides. So you don't need constantly render to see results. You see.
Of course, it's lagging since it has a lot of geometry, but you can get a pretty decent preview. And
Yeah, these are some early first render tests. These are more finished, almost at the end.
And this is when we started to add the snow. The snow is one of the great, it's a great primer of reusing assets, because it was the digital asset that's used for generating the snow was made for a previous project, and afterwards we applied it here, fixed it a few times, and we got some decent results. This is with an earlier phase, and this is one of the later ones. Here you can see the guides that are used for the simulation. I was kind of sad because most of the shots included the bear standing around and not moving too much. Yeah, but we decided to try and learn more for the coming up projects on how to do simulations better. Here is a primer of adding just a little bit of wind on the simulation of the fur. Because the fur is quite dense, the wind doesn't affect it a lot, but and we're done. Thank you.